I just crawled out of a freaking coffin. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm putting this on the internet.
Lately, I've been thinking, I want you to be happier. I want you to be happier. When the morning comes and we see what we've become in the cold light.
So, today I'm going to be filming a get ready with me. And I'm going to tell you guys a story about when I worked. And I'm not going to say what department store I worked at just because, I mean, this story has nothing to do with the store itself. It was just the store I happened to be working at. And I was young. I was only 16 when I worked there. I'm 28 now, so yeah. So I'm going to tell you guys about this. So I grew up in a really small town. So I had to drive like a half an hour to this department store where I worked. It's a pretty well-known department store. And I'm using the Tatcha Silk Canvas Primer. I've already like moisturized and whatever. So, and I probably use way too much. Like, I think you're supposed to use like a really small amount, but you know, I just don't do that. So, anyway, I had never worked, like, the only jobs I had ever had been in the town that I lived in, which was really small. So, like, I don't want to say that I was naive, but I was. Like, I didn't realize that there was, like, weirdo people out there, I guess. I don't know. It was just, like, I hadn't been exposed. That's what, I hadn't been exposed to, like, different kinds of people. So I was a cashier at this store and I worked in the laundry department. And I think they put me there because it was my first retail job. I didn't have a lot of experience and it was pretty slow. So I had worked there for a little bit and I would say I was probably the youngest person that worked there, at least one of the youngest. So I'm at the register and this woman comes up to me with her bras and she says to me, she asked me if she can write a check. Now you have to think this was 12 years ago. Yeah, 12 years ago. So checks were still like a pretty common thing. I know people still write checks, but like it's not as common at stores anymore. I feel like most places don't even take checks. Oh, I'm using the Rainforest of the Sea by Tarte. This is in the shade Medium Tan Sand. I'm pretty self-tanned right now. This actually might be a little bit too dark. I don't even know. We're gonna try it. So, and I was like, yeah, you just have to have a valid form of ID. And this is where all hell breaks loose. So the lady says to me, I don't have an ID. I spilled gas on it. I poured gas on it. I spilled gas on it. Sorry. And I was like, I spilled gas on your ID? Like, I don't even know how that would happen. Okay. So I'm like, okay. Well, let me call my manager over and see if there's anything that we can do for you. Now, my manager, and please don't anybody rip me apart when I say this, because I honestly don't know. My manager was this little tiny, and I mean tiny. She was like, she couldn't have been more than like 4'5". She was super tiny. Little tiny. I don't know if she was Asian or Korean or Japanese. Like, I don't know what ethnicity she was. And I'm sorry, like, if that offends somebody, I don't know. But you'll understand why that matters here in a second. Or why I'm even talking about her ethnicity. So, my manager comes over, or hold on, let me backtrack. I called my manager over the store, like, And the lady was like, don't say my name over the intercom. And I'm like, lady, I don't even know your name, okay? I'm like, whatever. She's like freaking out, like, don't say my name, don't say my name. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know your name, so it's fine. So my manager comes over, and like I said, she's this little tiny lady. And the lady with the bras was like, I want to speak to a white male manager. And I was like, she just said that to her. Now, I would like you to also keep in mind that our store manager was a man, but he was black. So, yeah, we're batting 1,000 here with who this lady will talk to. And my manager, her name was, we're just going to call her Sue, says to her, we don't have one of those. And I was like, oh my God. Like this woman's clearly like not right. So I'm sorry about my phone. It's like sitting right next to my camera. And I'm like, what is this crazy lady going to say next? So she starts talking to my manager, who we're going to call Sue. And she's like, I don't remember what she had said after my manager was like, we don't have one of those. But she was like, you know, I had this doctor and he was like you, and he burned bridges and he poured chemicals in my head. And like, these were the things she was saying. And I was like, what is this woman talking about? So then, I don't know, she like calms her down, whatever, she leaves, doesn't buy the bras. She comes back, and then, so if the laundry department's here, the men's department's here, like I could see the men's department register from my register. So she's back over there. She brings her license back in a pickle jar. In a pickle jar, yes. Her license that had gas on it. Yeah, that's the one. And the girl, okay, so let me get my thoughts together. So I don't go over there because this woman is clearly insane. She checks out. I go over there. I'm like, what happened? And she's like, she brought it in a pickle jar and she told me not to put it by the computer because it will blow it up. The register, not the computer. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? So then another girl that worked, or the girl that checked her out, was like, that lady lives in my neighborhood, and when I worked with, she would like jog in the morning. She would jog past this lady's house, and that lady would come out and scream at her and tell her not to run past her house because she would disturb her cats. Okay, fine. I mean, if you run past my house, you're going to disturb my dogs. They're going to bark like crazy. But like, I'm not going to go outside and yell at anybody about it because that's just who they are. That's not their problem. That's my problem. So I'm like shook by this. Like, like I said, I was young, I was naive, I hadn't been exposed to like a lot of craziness. Oh, I use the ColourPop No Filter Concealer. This is in the shade M20. It's a medium shade. Because I'm pretty self-tanned right now. But I feel like I could have gone a little bit lighter. So I'm like shook by this. And I go home. And I tell my mom and dad this story. And my dad, at the time, my dad and my grandpa, my dad's dad, my dad owned a insurance agency, and they insure fire departments. My dad was like, shut up. Listen to this. He probably didn't say shut up, but you know. He was like, he's like, I'm pretty sure I still have the paperwork at the office, but there was a woman that sued the fire department that was in the town where that department store was, because the laser beams on top of the fire truck burned her eyes. My dad's like, it has to be the same woman. It just has to be. Like, this is legit. This woman sued the fire department because the laser beams on top of the fire truck burned her eyes. And I'm like, I'm never going back to work again. Like, I cannot deal with this. Next I'm going to take the Dream Matte Mousse in Caramel Dark. And what I do, I use this as a cream, like a cream contour. I take my brush. I use this IT Cosmetics Heavenly Luxe Complexion Perfection number 7 brush. It's got the 2 sides. And what I do is I just take it and I like lightly tap so there's like coverage on the whole brush. And then I take the lid and I just kind of like roughly like tap the excess. I don't want a lot. And then I just kind of use it as a cream contour. It's not super heavy. It's just very like natural. This is my life. I'm sorry. So, yeah. That was my crazy time of working at a department store. I didn't work there for super long because I hated it. And like, I don't know, the drive home was insane. Another story about working there was, now I lived a half an hour away. I don't know if this is like a thing in all towns. I live in Illinois and I feel like it's pretty common around like where I live. Like all the towns like around me have curfews, but I don't know if that's like a thing everywhere. So I think on school nights, if you were like Monday through Friday, I think you had to be home by like 10. I can't remember. It was 10 or 11. I don't remember exactly. So I worked a half an hour away. I had school the next day. And it's a snowstorm outside, like a full-on like blizzard. And the store is like dead. There's like 7 people and probably the whole mall. And I'm like asking if I can go home. Cause like we didn't even close till 9. And then like you had to stay and like clean up and like my dad was on the fire department in the town that I lived in, and like I said, it's a small town, and like my dad knew all the cops, so like if I got pulled over, I probably wasn't gonna get in trouble if I was late, like past curfew, but you know, there's no saying that I wouldn't have, because technically I was breaking the rules. I'm gonna take the other side of that brush and just contour my nose. So I'm like asking if I can please leave. It's like 8, maybe 8:30. Like I'm like asking if I can please leave. It's like 8, maybe 8:30. Like we're about to close. Like it's not even that serious. There's no one in the store. The store's clean. Like it's really not serious. And they're like, no, you have to stay till close, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I live a half an hour away, which again, not your problem. I get that. But I'm underage, I live a half an hour away, and it's a blizzard outside. Like, it's easily gonna take me an hour to get home. They're like, no. So finally, they let me leave. It's like almost 9, so I did get to leave early. Cool. And I have to drive on these country roads to get home. And I literally, so I'm driving like this way. I literally spin and go backwards into a ditch on the other side of the road on my way home. This was not just any old ditch. This was like a deep, deep ditch. I'm using the Kat Von D Lock-It powder and then my beauty blender just to set my face. So, yeah. And I'm like in the ditch. There's all these cars pulling over to make sure I'm okay. And I'm like scared shitless because I'm 16 years old. And let me just tell you, this was the first of 3 times that I put my car in the ditch. Why anyone gave me a driver's license, I don't know. And yeah. So that was bad experience number 2 of working at this store. That wasn't really their fault. Like, none of these stories are really their fault. But they were just things that happened to me while I worked there. Next, I had to work. So I worked in the lingerie department, okay? The lingerie department. The very first Black Friday that I've ever worked retail, they put me in the damn kids department. Now, first of all, if you've ever worked a Black Friday in retail in a department store, you know why that's a problem. I had never worked in the kids department, so I was like, are you kidding? And I'm just gonna take this Real Techniques brush and a little bit just to set my eyelids. I don't like put it on there and like let it sit, I just kind of rub it in. So they put me in the kids department at like 6 o'clock in the morning on Black Friday. I'm pissed. So this woman comes up to the counter with a pile. I mean a pile, like stacked above my head of these kids' clothes that were like on clearance, and then on more clearance they were like ridiculously cheap. And she is making me tell her the price of every single item as I ring it. There had to be like 200 things here. I'm done at this point. Like, I'm so done. I'm over it. After this woman, I went up to my manager. I'm like, I don't feel good. I have to go home. It's a dick move. I get it. But I'm like, I don't feel good. I have to go home. They would not let me leave. Would not let me leave. I'm like, no, I'm leaving. I'm done. I found another job and a week later I quit. I think I put my 2 weeks in. I'm pretty positive I put my 2 weeks in. But yeah, needless to say, that was Ashley's last Black Friday at the store. Last time working at the store, period. So, yeah. I think that was the only like retail job I ever had. Most of my work experience is in like restaurants. I've worked in like a bunch of different restaurants. I've worked in a coffee shop. I've worked in a pizza place. I've worked in fine dining. I've worked in like chain restaurants. Like I worked at Lone Star. I worked at Texas Roadhouse, which I hated that job too. Texas Roadhouse was by far the worst job I've ever had. I hate that place. I don't even like going there to eat. Their bread's good. That's about it, but the rest of their food sucks. I feel like my husband's family always wants to eat there, and I literally hate that place. And they make it seem, because they just, like, the one here where I live isn't that old. They just recently put it in, and I had to, like, apply before the store even opened. I'm going to use the NYX Contour Kit. And I'm going to use this shade right here. And then the Benefit Hoola bronzing brush, I think is what it's called. I don't know. So I got hired before the store even opened. So like when I trained with everyone in the store. Like we trained in the store before it ever opened. So they were like making you follow every single rule, because anywhere I've worked, there's like, you know, especially corporate places, I'm not saying that they break the rules, but they don't like enforce every single rule that corporate puts into place. Like obviously the big ones, but you know, if you worked with corporate places, you know. Like I showed up with a belt that had rhinestones on it because you had to have your shirt tucked in with a belt. They literally made me leave and go to Kmart and buy a belt that didn't have anything on it. Yeah, I was pissed. I was pissed. So, yeah. And I work at Victoria's Secret now. I also do hair, but I'm just using some of that yellow powder in there just to kind of brighten this up. And I've worked at 2 different Victoria's Secret locations. One's like a huge store. The one I'm working at now is in the same mall where I worked at my first retail job. And it's a Victoria's Secret and Pink all in one store. Like, it's not like Pink Victoria's Secret. It's like all in one store. You walk in, there's Pink, and then you go back and there's Victoria's Secret. And the one I worked at last year, because I only worked there during the holidays, the one I worked at last year was just Victoria's Secret. So I worked at the store before, but it's been like 2 years because I worked at the bigger one. Okay. So yeah. Trying to think of if I have any other crazy work stories that I could tell you.